So now we're going to take a look at the brush tool, and you'll notice by accessing the brush tool right here, you'll see that there are a number of different options available up at the top, and we'll try to address as many of them as possible. If we click on the first one, you'll see that it is indicating what the master diameter for that brush is, and as you can see, that indicates what the size of this brush is. It indicates also the hardness of that brush, and what that means is if we're at 100%, you'll see a very hard edge around this brush, and if I can show you what that does, here, if I was to create a stroke, you'll see that that stroke has a very hard edge to it. However, if we reduce the hardness, let's say here to 0, and then I make the same stroke, you'll see the differences between those two. One of them looks very harsh, and the other one is much more feathery, almost like an airbrush effect. As well, you will also notice that modes are something that we'll be addressing a little bit later, but once you see the video on the screen modes, you'll recognize that as you draw these, that you can place them in overlay mode or soft light or any of the other modes that you're going to be working with. As well, opacity, which indicates how much visibility comes through this, how opaque the thing is, how clear it is. So we can give it almost like a ghost-like feathery impression. You'll notice that by clicking on this, there's a slider that you can use. Or just by going right onto the word opacity, you'll notice that it says set opacity for stroke. You can slide it this way or that way directly right there. So recognize that as I'm drawing this, it's very, very opaque. It's only 25%. And if I increase that, you'll notice that I can see what's underneath, simply because we've set the opacity, as opposed to this where we don't see any difference. So the flow is also indicating how much flow we see on that, and you see almost a harshness that is sort of brought back down. So here, if I have the hard edge again, you'll recognize that the flow is making things softer. And as you can see here, you can set to enable airbrush capabilities. And if you've got a stylus that you're using or some other type of device to draw with other than a mouse, you can work in that fashion as well. Also, you can recognize that there are many different types of brush strokes that are available, some presets. And there are also some other sort of dirty brushes. And as you can see here, very small, but perhaps what I can do is make them in black so you could see them a little bit better. Now, if you were to stroke with that, you'll see what that looks like. As well, you can see there's other ones that are much more sort of dirty and aggressive. If we stroke them, they look like this, but you can also just use them to sort of create some mess or junk on the page. As well, you'll notice that there are many other ones that do get a little bit bigger. As you can see here, they sort of have a look something like that. And if you were to draw with them, they would make a black line like anything else, but you'll notice the edges will be a little bit rougher. And I could come in here and I can harsh up that edge even more. Just working with this and get creative. This is the time when you can have some fun with your imagery and play around with these elements. Remember, you can always undo things. As well, as you can see here, we can access different colored elements. If I was to take my foreground color and my background color and sort of give them a different look and feel, these brushes, as you can see, will show you different colors. There we go. So these brushes are really a lot of fun if you know how to use them properly. There's something else that you can do by accessing some options over here. You can add calligraphic brushes to your work. And as you can see here, we can append them to the end of our file. And now that we have calligraphic brushes, you can create all kinds of brush work and stroke work. So for example, if I was to start with a new document and come in here, you can spell your name do whatever you need to do. These calligraphic brushes will allow you to do that in any different file and fashion. So here we are. Some other things that we can access are external files as well. You can go online and you can download all kinds of Photoshop brushes, and then all you would have to do is to load those brushes. As you can see here, I've got these faux finish brushes now in here, and they have different effects to them as well. You can apply those elements. Here I've got one going in the opposite directions. Notice this creates sort of a different impression, almost as if you're giving a little faux sort of texture on a background wall. So all of these things are available through the brushes. One other key element that I want to bring to your attention is that certainly we can access brush size here by doing this. You can also right click and access the brush size, as you can see there. Another thing that you might be able to do and be aware of is that the square bracket right next to the P on your keyboard shortcuts, the square brackets will allow you to increase the size or decrease. So the opening square bracket reduces the size of your brush. The closing square bracket increases the size of your brush. And as you can see, that's what they look like. So that's a little bit about the brushes inside of Photoshop. We'll see more as we continue.